going here. Thank you, Chad. Okay, so hopefully that's popped up for everyone. Excellent. Let me read section 199, which is what we ended off with last time. So I asked what he called the steeple house. Oh, said he, the dreadful house of God, the temple of God. And I let him and the poor dark people see that their bodies should be the temples of God. And Christ never commanded these temples, but had ended that temple at Jerusalem, which God had commanded. So the priest got away, and afterward the people began to tell us that they feared we would take their purses or steal their horses and judge us like themselves, who are naturally given to thieving. What strikes me about this section is just at the end there about they feared that the Quakers were going to also be thieves, and how challenging it can be to have trust. Let's hear from Lynn.
Hello, Donna. Thank you. A very small point. I read the poetry of Patrick Kavanagh recently. He was an Irish poet who came from unbelievable poverty in the 20th century. Just poverty we cannot imagine. And their culture was shaped by it. And he never really flourished after. They might have been like these people, pockets in Ireland, who were, staying alive was very hard for them. So easy to judge. And yet I wonder here what the sufferings of this little pocket of people were like. You say it would be so hard to trust, and you may be perfectly, exactly right, Donna, that where they lived did not create trust, and they needed a great deal of kindness. It's just conjecture, but this story of Patrick Kavanagh was searing, how hard it was, and it makes me feel sympathy for these poor people.
Thank you, Lynn. Oh, Bev?
This meant so much to me. It was so meaningful last week and into this week. And I was just listening to Neil Douglas Klotz last night about Jesus' teachings. And he was teaching to people that were just like this. They were nomadic, they were poor, they were downtrodden by the wealthy. There was no middle class. It was, and those are the people, I believe, that are suffering, that are ready to receive. So it means a lot. Yeah, it just means a lot. I'm going to put a poem in the chat that I think relates to this too, about the first part about who we are. We are the temple.
I put in the invitation, the question, why do early Quakers, why do they stress and think it's so important that our bodies are the temple of God instead of the building, the church building? And part of it is, to free people off of their captivity and almost enslavement to the church, where they have to attend by law and they have to tithe by law and they have to listen to the hierarchy of man, religious men. So part of it, I think, is to free them from having that enslavement to that system, that spirituality shouldn't be a system. It shouldn't be a man-made system and a man-run system. But to free us onto that which Spirit gives us within, all that Spirit gives us within, which is Spirit's infinite peace and joy and hope and love. And as we can see from reading the journal and religious people's reactions to Fox and other friends, we see that their hearts are not been transformed by that infinite peace towards all men, goodwill towards all men that comes from Spirit. In fact, we see something quite the opposite. And Fox says, you see the fruit of their religion in that they want to force other people to do it their way. And they're willing to go so far as to beat them up or kill them, rob them. And we also see that this idea of projection, where they will project their own evils onto the Quakers. And part of that is they're not being able to understand the motive of what's moving these people. So if they're tricksters, then they accuse the Quakers of being tricksters. If they're thieves and liars, then they accuse the Quakers of being thieves and liars. And it's almost a compulsive thing. And so if we know that we have not acted very well, but we know that this treasure lives inside of us, the kingdom is inside of us, the Spirit is inside of us, nonetheless, it gives people, I think, a hope of being something better, that they are something better in their deepest being. It calls them to be a clean temple for that Spirit. But it's the Spirit themselves within them that actually empowers us to be clean. It's a transformation of God, Spirit, the teacher within. But it kind of points to also what might be required on our end is a capitulation to that power. A capitulation to that part of themselves that is one with Spirit, that is not a thieving, lying, tricking spirit, but a spirit of infinite love and goodness. And so, it's a challenge to, when the light shines the strongest, it shows up the dirt much more clearly than otherwise. And so it's both an invitation to join the light and a showing up of things that are not in the light or from the light.
Let's hear from Bev.
Jesus taught from his nomadic background and the connection to the earth. So all his images are related to the earth or the natural world, and it's all good. And that's why he would say, we're unripe. So at the very essence of us, and that part that we feel when we're with each other is all good, all beautiful. And it's like religion wants us not to feel that connection, because when I feel that connection, that I am part of this earth, that I'm connected to all things on this earth, then I don't feel alone and I feel safe. And it's the opposite of what organizations want, because their purpose is not to empower us. Their purpose is to have power over. It's like thievery. So it seems so simple, but yet so difficult for us, because we've been trained from birth, instead of seeing what the little child sees as it's all good. It's all good. A storm is good. A tornado is good. It might wreak havoc because of the way we live, but it's all good. And what I see as good in that cardinal that's now feeding there is in me too. And it connects to that part of me, even though there are all these traumatized, burdened parts that get upset and have all these different emotions of anger and that. I know that those parts, when I can heal them with the help of spirit, it's all good, just like it's all good in nature.
Let's hear from Yuen.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, thank you for this sharing. Shada's question, what makes George Fox trust temple, our body is temple of God, and Beth sharing that we connect with the earth, gratitude can come up. What came to me is the question about myself, always question about myself. This is so okay. The way, like last time, we end up with the sharing that the world, the media, the social media actually is quite toxic. It's continuously giving us different things. Actually, though on one hand, tell me that the world's happening, however, is overwhelming and is also teaching me that I'm not good enough. And when I send out something and people not give me like, or saying this is not right and so on. So many overwhelming thoughts telling me I'm not good enough. So this is not good. So social media, actually, I reduce and reduce and reduce. The way I deal with these things is to set boundary, to make myself in my world, which is calmer and more, that the space I can be more grateful and don't look at those unhappy things. But my question is, the way George Fox did was, he did not put himself in a room that is calm, free of judgment, set a boundary, but he faced it. He went out to challenge the institution, challenge the power. He went out. How I found that I reduced my going out to meet with people because I know people more, their intention behind the thieving, selfish motive, and so on, my judgment, of course. So I cannot accept myself, my judgment. I don't like myself. Why I always think about other people? So I better not think that way. I better put myself in a box that I can think a better way, a lovely way. But George Fox did keep on telling me that this is not the way he did. He went out to challenge people, but in a nice way and not in a loving way. And people put him in a jail, torture him, and he sang the hymns and pray for them and so on. So how can he do that? Yeah, you can say this is a spirit because the spirit act in him, but he's also human. He's also a human being. This light is from God to every one of us. So this is the question I come to me at this moment.
Thank you, Ewan. Let's hear from Bev.
I just wanted to share, because of Ewan's question, like Jesus and George Fox, their presence just draws people to them. And I mean, what I understand George Fox's teaching is very simple, though very difficult, is simply to connect to spirit within yourself. And my experience with it is that the way is shown to what my actions need to be from there. Whether it's, my sense for myself, and I'm just sharing what I understand at this point in my life, is that my purpose is to connect ideas, or to connect to people, but to pass other things on. I'm not supposed to do what George Fox is doing. I'm not supposed to do what Shadow's doing. I'm not supposed to do what anyone else is doing. I have to find my path. And those answers come, I believe, through spirit. And for me, it's like there are blockages when I try and do other things. But when I do what I feel, what those actions are that feel like I get this feeling I have to contact someone and I have to say this or I have to share this. So I do it now all the time. And that settles, and it feels like that's the right thing for me to do. So that's what I do. And I don't think it's coming from my traumatized parts where I feel, because I have been always motivated by righteous indignation, someone said to me. Well, that righteous indignation is from my parts, from my traumatized parts. It's not from spirit. And I know when it's that, like, how can they do this? I know it's like, just settle. It's okay. It's okay. It's not your job. It's not your job. So I just wanted to share that I believe that what each of us has as our purpose will come to us from spirit.
And there is that when God or spirit calls us to something, then we're empowered by spirit to do it. We don't even do it in our own strength, but we are willing for spirit to move through us in the way that spirit leads us. It comes under the governance of spirit, even though we are complicit and concurrent. What's the word? We're agreeing with it, right? We're letting it happen through us. We want it to happen through us, maybe even. And so people have different callings, and I think they're empowered in different ways to do that. But it's also the greater that we're foundationed in that light, the more we're empowered against the dark. A power that doesn't come from us and from our strength and our wisdom and our governance, but it comes from something greater that is part of us, and we're one with it. But it's not just a human level of empowerment and strength and courage, clarity and chutzpah. It seems like every day I have to pray for those things: the clarity, the courage, and the chutzpah to get things done, right? Because otherwise I don't have it within me, especially. And so I think Fox has gone, we see at the beginning of the journal, if you read there, you see his dark night of the soul kind of thing, where he is under a lot of pressure and things are not right in the state of George. And he is in a lot of angst and pain. And then you see the Spirit of God comes and he is in joy. He's in the bliss of God. And then you see him go back into the angst and he knows things aren't right within him, let alone without him, which he sees as well. And so he comes to a place of surrender. He sees he has no hope within himself. He goes to the preachers of First Anglican Church and then the Separatists, and he finds no hope in them. And then he hears the voice of the inner teacher saying, I can speak to your condition. There's one who can speak to your condition. And there's one who knows us better than we even know ourselves. And so the more we're connected to that, spirit of infinite peace, that peace that surpasses understanding, that gives us peace in the midst of the storm, inward peace. And so that we're no longer sustained by needing the outward situation to be without challenge, because we have that inner power that comes from spirit, that Fox would say lifts you over the darkness, lifts you over the turmoil. And so once again, his number one recommendation to friends when they're in difficult straits is not to move outwardly in their own power, in their own wisdom, and in their own guidance, but to wait for spirit, to see how spirit leads, guides, empowers. And so Fox would be first, I think, to confess that it's not his own power, his own wisdom, and his own governance that he's trying to operate under. And Jesus said the same thing. Everything I do, I'm not doing for my own will. Everything I'm saying, I'm not saying for myself. I'm waiting for that spirit of the Father to lead me, and I'm doing what I see Abba doing, and I'm saying what I'm hearing Abba say. And so that empowers us. The light empowers us over the darkness, even if it's an ocean of darkness, which Fox had a revelation of one time. There's an infinitely greater, more powerful ocean of light that we're invited to dive into and become one with. And we don't even have to look outwardly for it. It's already within us, in our spirits, in our deepest part of our being. It does take tuning in, which is hard at times, to tune in, to wait, to stay low in the spirit, to stay back and not engage in our own strength.
Are we ready to move on to section 200? I see a few nodding heads. Any volunteers who would like to read this section? Lynn? Lovely, thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love to read. And I think this next section illustrates what Chado has just mentioned about staying low and listening. And the next day we came through that country into Cumberland again, where we had a general meeting of many thousands of people atop of a hill near Langlands. Heavenly and glorious it was, and the glory of the Lord did shine over all. And there were as many as one could well speak over. There was such a multitude. Their eyes were kept to Christ their teacher, and they came to sit under their vine. That afterwards, a friend in the ministry, Francis Howgill, went amongst them, and when he was moved to stand up amongst them, he saw they had no need of words. for they was all sitting down under their teacher Christ Jesus. And so he was moved to sit down again amongst them without speaking anything.
Thank you so much, Lynn. And let's hear from Bev.
It just makes me feel so grateful that I have found Quaker worship groups where I know that's the same kind of thing. It's just so marvelous. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
Having heard Lynn read this and reflecting on Bev's comment, and I feel so calm and after reading this part, and just so touched by the concept of that you can be with others and there's no need for words. And so contrary, I often think about the world that we live in and how it's just so busy with thoughts and words, and here there was no need for words. They communicated in deep ways.
And as a funny aside, you might count it a miracle when the preacher gets up to speak and then doesn't say anything and sits down again. But there comes a time when you don't want to speak because it will mess up what God is already saying to the people. You don't want to interfere with what the teacher is saying within them and how the teacher is leading them. Because that's the better work and produces a better fruit result within the person.
And Shadow, that's interesting. What I was wondering about the meaning of sitting under the vine, and was that related to the symbolism of the fruit of the vine? They were sitting under the vine, under the fruit of the Spirit. Is that possible?
Yeah, Jesus said he was the true vine. I think maybe it's John chapter 10, could be wrong with the reference, but on our own, we cannot produce, you can do nothing to produce the good. But when we abide in spirit, when we abide in Christ, then he produces the fruit within us and through us. And it's, a very good vintage.
Let's hear from UN.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to share last time when we finished the Zoom, and it keeps coming to me, the song that my little children, when they were in Sunday school, we were talking about temple of God, right? So my whole body feel that. So this is the house of the Spirit. So there it is fruit of the Spirit. And then I sang the song, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, gentleness, and self-control. And then it keeps coming. The song keeps coming when I'm cooking, when I was cooking and doing chop, chop, chop. And then I keep dancing and singing that song. So I feel like, yeah, it's if my body is temple of God, is the fruit of the Spirit filled in me, I don't have to care about why I'm not good enough. It's just natural. Okay, so you keep unfolding like this. Thank you for sharing, listening.
Thank you for sharing. That was a lovely song. I was thinking we'll have the Friendly Friday choir. Let's hear from Elise and then Bev. Elise.
So sitting under under your own vine brings to my mind, there's more than one place in the First Testament where this is mentioned, but in particular what I'm thinking of is from Micah, and I'd like to read that section. This is the 4th chapter of Micah, beginning on verse 2. Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between many people, and shall arbitrate between them, between strong nations far away. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my phone. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. For they shall all sit under their own vines and under their own fig trees, and no one shall make them afraid. For the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken.
Oh, wow. We could all wish for that today.
That was so moving, Elise, and thank you for that. And let's hear from Bev.
First of all, I'm just so thankful for your gifts today. It's very wonderful to know that you're connecting to what we need to connect to understand our own goodness. And my understanding is for all spiritual beings, there's a very strong meaning of trees, even in the original Jewish tradition during Jesus's time. I think it was the linden and the oak have strong meaning, and in other cultures, trees have strong meaning. And across the bottom of my email, I actually have to look at it because I never memorize anything. I always have, if we surrendered to Earth's intelligence, we could rise up rooted like trees. It's from Rilke. So I think those Earth images help us to feel that we're on the right track if we're connecting. And I also wanted to say, I mean, this does not happen all the time, but the northern flicker has been here through almost all the time that we've been together. And once in a while, there's a little woodpecker that comes. And, the northern flicker has only come a few times. Yesterday, while I was at a round table with Indigenous elders, and it was a very deep space, the flicker was here. And if you look up the spiritual meaning of these different animals, it's quite amazing. So I just wanted to share that we're doing good stuff here.
Are we clear to move on to the next section? How do friends feel? Oh, go ahead, Lise.
Just looking back at the paragraph that we finished, in the middle of the paragraph, we see their eyes were kept to Christ, their teacher. This was not an easy time for these folks. They were not living in, amidst a lot of peace. We have the possibly gift and certainly bane of awareness of things that are going on all around the world, and of all the suffering and confusion those folks weren't aware. They didn't have the awareness of other things going on around them. But they were not living in a time of peace. And where this comes from is not, to me, this applies to us today. Our eyes are not kept to Christ, our teacher. For if they were, we also could be still. And there's something in that of keeping low and letting go of our own agendas and our own entanglements emotionally with pain and suffering that we can do nothing about. We allow our eyes to be turned away from Christ. For if we really did let go of these things and were settled in Christ, we would have peace. In the midst of horrors, we would still have some sense of inner peace because of our connection to this power of the Spirit.
Elise, I'm prompted to think about Juliet of Norwich, and I'm trying to find the actual wording of her quote, but I think it's something like, all is well, and all is well, and all manner of thing is well. And when I first heard that, I struggled with it because I thought, but that's not the case. All things are not well. But maybe that's reflecting a deeper understanding that if you have that Christ peace inside you, then all is well.
Then you have that infinite assurance and hope that all things will be brought to good, even if they don't look like good right now, that God can bring good from them. And sometimes that looks like a bigger challenge and miracle than other times.
I'm chuckling because this is reminding me of a conversation that I had with a shopkeeper yesterday. So in my morning, my darling husband brings me a cup of tea before I get out of bed. And I've been sitting in my bed and looking around my room after I had put out some Christmas decorations. And there's a little plaque that says, peace, joy, love. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, similar to the 4 weeks of Advent, but not the same. It's missing something. What is it missing? And I noticed that I also have a tea towel in my kitchen, the same thing. It's got 3 words and it's missing one. And I looked up a little bit of about the history of the Advent wreath and Advent calendar, and that was very interesting to me. And of course, as Chad whispered a moment ago, the thing that is missing is hope. And as I said I was recounting this story to the shopkeeper yesterday, and she said, and of course, that's the most important one. That's where we set our sights for the future. And we looked at each other and smiled. Beth?
From what Elise said, it's like for these people and ourselves, we have this moment. There was a moment, nothing had to be said, but it doesn't last. Everything's impermanent, but we know we can be in that space. So that human part of us, when we're struggling, I know that I always use the phrase, it's from Thich Nhat Hanh, it could be from Jesus, it could be from Moses, it could be from any, At this moment, I am safe. At this moment, I am okay. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. The breath is ruha, the word that Jesus would have used, is that connection. I'm fine. Even if I'm in the midst of dying, I'm fine. I'm home. If I have that connection, I can't have it all the time. You know, and sometimes when I have felt very deeply the connection, the immediate thing I go to is addictive behavior of playing games online. And it doesn't make me happy, but it's all I can do at that point. So I'm very kind to myself and saying, okay, if this is what you have to do, it's not very helpful, it's not very pleasing, but if that's what you have to do to continue, okay, you'll be there again another day. I have to be kind to myself. I can't, I'm very proud of the things I can do, and I let myself know that. And I have to be kind to those parts that just can't deal with stuff yet. But yeah, that moment of connection, and that's what I feel in meetings. So that's why I'm very grateful for that.
And this reminds me of what Quakers mean by a gathered meeting, that sense of being together and no need for words. Elise?
Oh, you got muted again.
Possibly an illustration of what we're talking about, the that which is on the outside is not the same as that which is on the inside, or that which is eternal. Many years ago, I'm a registered nurse, and many years ago, I went with a bunch of friends to Haiti on a medical mission, and we established a clinic up in the mountains, which we met people and helped them as much as we could, which is really very little when you come and go like that. My first time up there, everything was new to me, and we are on the way to the place we're going to be staying, and we're in I guess it was a big truck, probably bigger than a pickup truck, but several people were in the cab part, and the rest of us were in the open back part. There was something to hold on to. It wasn't like we were just on a flatbed, but we were open to what was going on around us. And we're going up in the mountains. The roads are very curvy, and they're just about one vehicle wide. And there is no guardrail. So you just really, people go over there people go over those, precipices all the time there, and die. So this is my first time, and we're kind of flying up the road. And what happens when you come to a corner, you're supposed to honk your horn. And then if somebody's on the other side, they honk their horn, and then somebody tries to find a wide place so that the two can pass each other. So I'm leaning in like this is going to matter, We're going around these corners, and somehow I'm thinking if I just lean over here toward the middle, that'll keep our vehicle on the road. But something happened, and this is the thing. So after a while, it was okay. And the thing that was okay was that it didn't matter. It wasn't a sense of we will be fine, that we won't have an accident here. It was, it's okay. Whatever, it's like Sister Jillian, all manner of things shall be well. There was an overwhelming sense of safety. I guess a safety in God, because we were just in as much physical danger as before, but it was like none of that mattered. I wasn't afraid after that.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear, because your staff and your rod, they comfort me. I'm not sure if I'm mixing up to different verses, but he's with us, and that power is within us. And sometimes we need to be rescued from that part of us that does fear, that isn't kind to ourselves, that hasn't been healed yet from the trauma, that hasn't been transformed from society's programming, which is often not kind and loving. That's what being the temple of God can be, that we can connect with that spirit within us that is infinitely kind and loving, even to ourselves. Bev?
I think this is quite wonderful. I had an experience like Elise, and what I realize is that it's not something I can do in my head and make myself, oh, I will be okay. It's something that comes upon you because of your practice, because of what you do daily prepares you for it. I go out in my car and I love driving, but I have to do this whole routine because I have a fear of getting lost, because I have geographic dyslexia. All kinds of things come up. So I'm always talking to myself in the car. It's okay. We're fine. I'm taking care of you. Everything's good. Look at, and we're fine driving. And one day, during the summer, I was picking up some vegetables on a side. I have to go down a few side roads near me. And then coming back, I make a right turn and there's a curved road. So all I can see, just to very close, maybe I can't do measurement, very close, there's a curve in the road. And as I'm turning right, this truck is barreling around the corner and coming into my lane straight at me. So I know that I put my brake on and I honked my horn, and it curved away and went away. And then I kept driving. And then I realized your heart rate didn't go up. You're not upset. Your body didn't. That is really weird. And every time I go that route, I look and I think, you could have died. It was such a short distance between you. No effect. No effect. And it was such an amazing experience. And I was so glad Elise gave hers because, oh, that's what it is. And I didn't do anything to have that experience. It's just that I have to do my practice, and then things happen.
Shall we move on to 201? And would there be a volunteer to read the next section?
I'll read.
Thank you, Yuan.
So great a convincement there was in Cumberland, Bishopric, Northumberland, Yorkshire, Westmoreland, and Lancashire, and the plants of God grew and flourished. So by heavenly rain and glory and God's glory shined upon them, that many mouths the Lord opened to his praise. Yea, to babies and sucklings he ordained strength. In Bishopric there were a few steeple houses, but friends were moved to go to them. Nay, I may say few in England, but friends were moved to go to them and warn them of the mighty day of the Lord, to tell them where their true teacher was, and a great people was convinced.
Thank you. Let's hear from Bev.
Is it my imagination or, all these references to nature? I don't remember George Fox doing that much of it before, or maybe it's just me, but I think it's so amazing. It's just lovely.
Thanks, Bev. And let's hear from Yuan.
I'd like to ask a question that those image, the plants of God grew by heavenly rain, and is it a parallel writing, or actually is the plants in the city actually there flourished? It is did I make my question clear?
Not for me.
Bev?
If I understand what Yun Chun is asking is whether George Fox is talking about actual plants. For me, it's connecting. Yes, it's the plants, but it's the people. They're the plants. But it's all the same, you know? we and the plants are the same.
So it's like sometimes when we go into a room that is full of friends or full of group of people that we knew long time ago, or for a while we've been interaction and maybe having conflict or not happy moment. But that was the day when I went into the room, I saw God's time is here. The plans there was ripe and ready to be harvested. That kind of feeling.
I'm noticing for the first time when looking at this passage how much it's God ordained the prayers, the Lord ordained prayers from many mouths. And he gave strength to babes and sucklings. And how much it seems to be like God is moving the people and causing them to grow and sending heavenly rain upon them. It's so much not a thing that is coming from humans and human power and organization and human strategies, and it's all so divinely appointed and moved and powered and governed. I don't think I noticed that the other times that I read this passage. Other religious groups are trying to get people to follow them and do it their way. And the early friends were trying to get people to tune in to their inward teacher, which is Christ, and follow Christ and not themselves. And they might have, if they got a lot of people to believe the way they believe, they might take a lot of glory in themselves and what they accomplished. But we see Fox giving glory to God for what God accomplishes. He's taking none of the credit. And I really love that about early friends.
Thanks, Chado. Over to Bev.
This has really opened my eyes to another way of seeing what happens in meetings or when I look outside. It's like sitting in a meeting in silence. I can really feel like I'm this plant just there, sitting, waiting, and then someone gives ministry, and it's like, oh, it's like the sun has shone down on me, or the rain has fallen on me. It's like, oh, and I love this. I love this. It's just another way that I can understand what my human self feels at those times, because it's always meaningful. So it's just rain coming down or sunlight coming down, and it's It's a wonderful way of seeing it now. That's why I always feel so, even if I'm upset, even if someone's talking about their suffering, to feel that compassion or understanding, it's growth. And yeah, it's quite a wonderful image that's very helpful to me.
Let's hear from UN.
Yeah, it comes to me, this is my prayer at this moment. I like to share with you that is reminding me. This morning I saw, not the news, someone sent out what happened in Taiwan. In it's a place called Danshui. You know, these few years, what happened in Hong Kong because of that national security law. So many people left Hong Kong, and of course, including those who had been in prison, and they fled to Taipei, to England, to Canada. And last year, 2 church pastors opened a church in Danshui. But this morning, the picture I saw was that church has to be closed because the church pastor changed and the congregation migrate to other places. Taiwan did not allow people to stay anymore now. Too many people went there. And my very close friend, a church pastor, had been helping people from Hong Kong to settle in Canada, in Toronto. And he said, maybe someday I want to open a church that especially welcome Hong Kong people. So the image this morning I saw in Danshui in Taiwan, that made me, I have to deeply and pray hard for this, my friend, because he reduced his salary from his current church, and in order to have more time to help the people from Hong Kong. So this thing, I'm praying that the heavenly rain be present and pouring down to these church pastors who want to help, and also to the people who come together to worship God from Hong Kong. Is this week we had one of the young lady, 26 years old, who still in probation, but came to Toronto. CBC had interviewed her. So 5,000 more young people are still in prison in Hong Kong. The situation is so, but anyway, this image, it gives me, and I pray God we need this heavenly rain from spirit, not from people's effort. Very busy. What can we do? We can do this, we can do that. Of course, this is also important. So we need more prayer. May God's love and persistence the strength from God to them, to us.
Hosea 10:12. Sow righteousness for yourselves, reap the fruit of unfailing love, and break up your unplowed ground. For it's time to seek the Lord until he comes and showers his righteousness on you. I just love the idea that he is growing us as plants to produce a fruit of unfailing love, which is righteousness. It's the same thing. There's no separation. That we might nourish the people around us. That God would produce a crop from us and every month, and that the leaves would be used as the healing for the nations. These are the things that God, Spirit, is trying to establish on the earth. And we get to take part. We get to move from spirit, from really friends were fond of this saying that when we move from that life, that capital L life within us, that divine life, that life from spirit, that's what produces life in the world. But if we don't move by that light, from that light, and empowered by that light, and governed by that light, life, then it doesn't happen so much. It's life that produces life. And that's why false religion that comes from man's strength and governance and wisdom doesn't produce life, it produces death. But we're invited to take part, to be a channel of Spirit's life. To be planted and foundationed in Him.
Ewan, is your hand up anew, or was it from before? I've lost track. Okay, thank you. Bev?
I'm trying to find the transliteration from the Aramaic prayer, Yeshua's prayer, and I can't find it right now, but it's all about, you know, being on the path, that we are often off the path, but being on the path and ripening. And today it just helps make it so clear. It's just amazing to me that this has been an issue of language for me, especially the last couple of weeks, and has been a great source of learning, but also a lot of upheaval. And I'm just so thankful this is here today, because it makes it so clear to me, you know, what I need to do. I need the practice of being on the path and to ripen through that and to heal. And it's just so comforting. Oops.
And I forgot to say it before last time. He gives strength to babes and sucklings. So that they are not moved by their own strength, but his strength. And he also gives wisdom. And we saw that with the early friends, that teenagers would be moved by God to go out and preach the word of life that comes from life. And as soon as we're off of our own wisdom and onto his wisdom and his guidance and his strength, I remember Fox talks about the one guy, he was still in his slippers and he went out into the marketplace and started proclaiming the word of life that God was giving him. He didn't bother to change his shoes or anything. He just thought, oh, God's moving me, time to go. And he was just newly convinced. But he is unto that, the path that comes from spirit. And so he wasn't moving by his own wisdom or his own righteousness, his own goodness. He was moving by the infinite goodness that comes from spirit and wisdom and strength. And so the more tuned in we are to that, the more we get to move in the spirit's purity. And we aren't reclaiming ourselves and our own goodness, which for me would be very little. We're moving in the infinite spirit. And when we allow the infinite spirit's words to come from us, the infinite spirit produces the infinite spirit's fruit. I don't have to strive to produce my own. I get to receive that which comes from spirit, from God. Lynn?
Among us, there are deep gifts of the Spirit. and among us there are great gifts of ministry. But we all must ripen. And in the silence, there is teaching waiting for each of us. And in the silence, we will each be helped to ripen.